Hello to the chicos and the chicas. In today's video I am going to show you how easy it actually can be to win a game of chess, even against rather high rated and highly titled opponents as high as a Grandmaster even, by simply relying very heavily on basic chess principles. And this is actually something that is particularly close to my heart because, as many of you would know, my most successful chessable courses are the Chess Principles Reloaded series. And so I believe that this is actually a great way for me to show you that I do what I preach, but also to show you that these things really do translate to tangible results in chess. So without further ado, let's dive into the game, which I played against the Portuguese Grandmaster. I don't know which one it was. There are not a lot of Portuguese GMs, but his account was verified, so it's definitely a Grandmaster opponent. I am black, and the opponent starts off the game with e3. And right away, I'm like, okay, that's good news, because it's not e4, it's not d4, so I'm jumping in for the center. e5 is also good here, by the way, but then after d4, black is facing a bit of an awkward decision where you don't really want to take. Yeah, there is not really a clear way to retain the center and the central tension, hence my preference here to d5. He plays d4, so now we transition into a d4 opening where an early e3 was played. Hardly a way for white to play for any kind of advantage. So I immediately challenge the center, and he hits back with c4. So at this point I am fully aware of the fact that probably my best course of action is to play actually symmetrically with e6, transitioning into the Tarrasch, or take on d4 and after retake play knight f6, which would actually transition into the Karo-Kampanov, which is an e4 opening. And here, as a little bit of a detour, I must stress that it's very important, for this very reason by the way, to know very briefly openings that you actually don't play, because if you just blindly go into this without recognizing that it's a Karo-Kampanov, then you have got one fewer base of knowledge to rely on, whereas now, although I don't play the Karo-Kam with black, but I certainly do play it with white, I would know what to fall back onto. Anyway, I played knight f6, it's a slight inaccuracy. I thought that after take, it would be the same story. I overlooked the idea that after take, there is this very annoying check possible, when if I block on d7, then after queen d4, I can't take on d5. My opponent was unaware of this as well, and he took on c5, which is another rather lackluster move, after which it's more or less a reversed Queen's Gambit accepted what we are looking at, and I was more than happy to actually engage with this. I played e6, knight c3, bishop takes c5, and my opponent played a3. And that was the second time in the game when I felt like, I don't know, this is getting weird. I mean, I did play a5 in the end to deny b4. In hindsight, knight c6 may have been a better choice, and if b4 simply pull back to b6, I did not consider it long enough. Maybe in a long time control game I would have opted for this. In the game I went for a5, simply denying b4. Which, by the way, b4 by itself is not a worry, it's just that I didn't want to allow the bishop to come to b2. He took on d5, I took back, and lo and behold, we have an IQP. Now, I have made several videos about how to play the IQP, the isolated queen-pawn structure, and I was thinking when I was preparing for this video that if I had to learn, or rather, if I had to pick one pawn structure of all the pawn structures that are out there that I could study or learn or know inside out at the expense of not knowing any other, what would that be? 100% guaranteed I would want to be the master of the IQP, for two reasons, because it's one of the most frequently occurring. Two, it's one of the easiest one to play along certain principles. And three, because it's really fun on either side, and that's actually a very big factor. So this is definitely something I would have opted for if I had ever been given that very awkward choice of you can only know one structure. Anyway, back to the game. Knight f3, castles, all normal. Queen c2. Now, I've cannot stress it enough, and I do this a lot in my videos, but I want to repeat this. This is not the move I anticipated. Not even close. In fact, my anticipated move was bishop e2. And that's it. I did not think that he would do anything but that. And without wanting to sound cocky, I would say that pretty much everything else falls under the umbrella of bit sus. Right? And so when my opponent played queen c2, I'm not judging his actions based on his title or whatever. I am judging it based on what did I anticipate, how is the move different. And the move queen c2 is, to me, is just a positional inaccuracy, to say the least. A mistake would be potentially too harsh. But the point is that white removes a piece from the d4 square, which is the square in front of the isolated pawn, which he needs to control and optimally blockade. Now, he lost control, and therefore he's losing his chance to blockade that. He's not developing. He plays an early queen move. I'm like, bzz, bzz, this is no go. I played knight c6 because remember that weird stuff gets beaten by normal stuff. Obviously, I did look at the tactical possibilities based on the bishop being loose on c5, but the only knight jump is knight d5, which is met by queen d5, a move that sufficiently defends the bishop. And again, as I am sitting here, I am anticipating bishop e2. And again, that's pretty much the only thing I'm reckoning with, because that's what I would do, and that's what I think is the best move in the position. Although, I briefly considered the idea of knight b5 scoring a tempo on the bishop, and then after bishop b6 going back to d4 to blockade the crucial d4 square. But again, in this structure, the queen stands on c2 horribly compared to d1, where it would provide extra support to the d4 knight. And according to the engine, both rook e8 and bishop g4 undermines this, undermined rather, this setup on f3 and d4 rather effectively. So I expected bishop e2 here. My opponent actually, oh, he did play knight b5, never mind. And again, I expected here either bishop e2 or knight d4. What did I get instead? Bishop d3. And by now, all kinds of alarm bells are going off in my head. And at this point, I would like to point out to you an interesting fact, and that is that one way you can identify a reasonably stronger player against someone who is far weaker is the pool of candidate moves that they consider versus the pool of moves that they instantly dismiss to the side, thinking, not looking at that because that is just, that is ought to be bad. Like, it just should be wrong, not even looking. And I'm not saying that I'm a good player, but my pool of candidates here for white was extremely narrowed down to these two moves. And this obviously helps a good player to be very effectively better than someone further down on the ladder, because what this allows them to do is to focus all of their energy on the right choices and work out what to do against them. And obviously, the better the player, the more likely that they hit the nail with their expected candidates to be the right ones. And here the engine confirms that bishop e2 is best. This queen bishop layout, when you are playing against the IQP, is 1 in a million that it works. Because the logic of the IQP is that you want to control the square in front of the pawn, and you ideally want to blockade it. And this layout does nothing whatsoever to accomplish this goal. In fact, it leaves the f3 knight loose, and it seems to be chasing some sort of weird idea that it's white who is going to have initiative against h7 and my king, which is just completely wrong. And I really don't want to sound disrespectful towards a GM opponent, but the way how he played this opening, in my mind, by now, I'm like, dude, you can't do this. This is gonna lead to disaster unless I stuff up, which I tend to traditionally do an awful lot. So again, weird stuff gets beaten by regular stuff, so I've developed my bishop. And now I'm threatening with take and d4, blowing up the position as soon as possible. Note that now castles is like, oh, I don't know, I'm not super excited to castle into this loose king. 95 is a tempo. It's just looking wrong in every possible way. And so he now realized that he was in a bit of a pickle, and he played bishop d2, which by the way is another bad move, but at least it sort of keeps me guessing about where the king is going, potentially may be able to build up the so badly desired blockade on d4, although having played bishop g4, I essentially eliminated one potential blockader, so d4 square is out of his control, and that's a big issue. And at this point I played a really unfortunate bad move. I wanted to take on f3 followed by d4. That was my number one priority, and my number two was just to simply play rook e8, which according to the engine is the best move, and just increase my advantage by just putting my pieces on best squares, which again is traditionally what you are meant to do. I played something that is very attractive to the eye, rook c8. The idea behind this move was purely to score just one more tempo on the queen, optimizing one more piece placement before I go in for the take and break. And as I'm saying it, it makes perfect sense. The only reason why it's not good is a calculating fault or mistake that I've made, because I didn't reckon with bishop f5 here, hitting rook, hitting bishop, more or less forcing the trade of these pieces, after which white's position is significantly better than what it would have been if I had taken right away on f3. However, my opponent missed that and played queen a4, and now I went like, alrighty, time to kill. I am fully developed. Note, by the way, that that's almost always a sign that you're doing well, that you have a beautifully, harmoniously developed army against one that is developed, but pieces are all over the shop, and the king is stuck in the middle. So what do your principles tell you now to do? Blow it open. Open it up. It's that simple. So it doesn't matter whether you are an IM or a 1400 club player, the principles don't change. Your opponent's king is stuck in the middle. Your job is to blow it open. How did I do that? Took on f3, played d4. That's it. And now after ed4, I have got an open avenue to the king. Now white is essentially lost here, because there is no way to undo the damage. e4 would be most sensible as far as I am concerned to keep the position open, but unfortunately it loses due to tactical reasons. 95 hitting here, and if the bishop goes back, then d3 wins. If the king comes up here, then there are lots of different wins, but takes, and 97 is a particularly pretty one, where white is facing absolutely disastrous checks and attacks and tactics all the way. So this is just carnage. My opponent, he played bishop f5, trying to distract me by attacking the rook. Now, this is again where there is a very clear distinction between lower rated club level players and higher rated title players, FMs, IMs, and so on. If you ask a higher rated player what they think about this move, and what are they thinking exactly in terms of where to go next, you would not hear in the first 5 sentences that this is hanging. That would be not part of any kind of evaluation. What you would be hearing instead is that the white king is in the middle. I'm really liking the look of d3, opening up another file and loosening up the king. And I'm already seeing that after de, I will have knight e5, knight f3 check, getting onto the king. Notice the focus here. That he attacks my rook, and I'm not even as much as giving them the credit to recognize the act of my rook being attacked. No, not happening. Because that, as far as we are concerned right now, is a perfectly irrelevant fact. It's like saying that the queen is blockading the a pawn. I don't care. I want to mate this king. So this rook is hanging. Can't care less. When I play de3, they can't take because it's mate in 2. And so that's exactly what we did. What is the principle in operation here? Our opponent's king is stuck in the middle. Their pieces are poorly coordinated. The position is about to blow up. We cannot be on the defensive. Chess would be a vastly unjust game if in this position the only way for me to go forward would be to defend the rook. There's no way that I'm looking at that. So I took e3, he took back, and I played knight e5. Don't care about the rook. I want to go in here and here. Notice that now this is full on. I am throwing in the kitchen sink to conduct this attack the most effectively. But, and this is a crucial idea that a lot of people misunderstand, and probably I misphrased it because I said I'm throwing in the kitchen sink. There is no risk in what I am doing. Zilch. And this is actually something that club level players totally understand, in that they go like, oh, but what if it doesn't work? Like, there's no such case because I calculated it and it wins. The only way to take risk here for black is to secure the rook and move it. Because that means that I put a full halt, a full stop. Like, just we're not going anywhere with the attack. And instead I'm starting to play meaningless moves. That is risking everything. Carrying out the attack and calculating that if I go there, they take check, queen d2 and carnage, that carries zero, absolutely zero risk. This is the least risky way to play the game. When you are going in for the kill, ruthlessly, accurately, relying on calculation. That's the way to go. Knight e5, king e2 was played, dead lost. Like, it doesn't matter what they do, even if they defend g4 with a different move. The engine favors queen d1 when both queen d5, knight d3 check wins. For the record, right now we are -7. Just by doing what principles told me to do. He plays king e2 and again doesn't register. I don't care. My eyes are drawn to that king like there was no tomorrow. And what I'm noticing about this king is that it's overworked. It's guarding the bishop, guarding the pawn. Bingo! I want to destroy that defense. Entirely wipe it off the board. And that's what I'm doing. And now after king takes, I'm going to take d2. And then e3 is going to hang. He plays here bishop c3. Which was his way to retain the defender of the d2 square, so I can't go in. The knight is hanging, the rook is hanging, and now I just told you two perfectly relevant facts, because I can't care less about the knight hanging, as I made it very apparent when I did this, and I can't care less about the rook hanging, as I have made it apparent for the last 5 moves. What I want to do here, and it's all me now, because we are attacking, they are defending. What I want to do is queen d2. Why can't I do that? Because this bishop is guarding it. So boom. Not a lot of thinking went into this, and I'm telling that to you with pride. Because that's how naturally attacks flow. There is a king in the middle, it has a guard, the guard can be captured. Boomski. In fact, boomski. Boomski. So took, check, takes, check. And at this point I already saw the game till the very end. In fact, I already saw it here, that it would be a false mate in case they take this. So the calculation that took place was like this: check, king g2 only, queen check, king h3 only, check, the king goes back to g2, check back again on f2, king comes back to h3. I hope you are still following me, and then queen f3 check. And then when the king lands on h4, I will have bishop f2 mate. As a matter of fact, I could have done it without taking the bishop now as I'm looking at it, so my calculation was completely faulty and incorrect, because he check, here and here would have been the right way to mate. But for some ridiculous reason I decided to take this, then redo the situation, and then deliver the exact same mate. And my grandmaster opponent resigned here on move 25 with white. That's how easy it can go if you do not follow principles, or rather your opponent doesn't follow principles and you do. So let's do a quick summary of what went wrong with white in this game and how it was exploited. So the first thing that went wrong was lack of coherent development. And in fact, we can just say lack of development full on. So queen c2, like, why are you playing queen moves, bro, when your bishops are at home and you haven't castled? This is literally what I would tell a 600 rated player. If I saw them doing that, I would be like, what are you doing? You're meant to bring out bishops, castles, and then let's develop the queens. That's like Chess Assassins 101, right? Just because a Grandmaster does it, it doesn't become good, right? So that's one. That's two, when the bishop needed to go to e2 to secure the knight on f3, and also to keep the d file open for a potential blockade, although queen c2 already ruined that big time. So, number two. And tada, that was also a mistake, although I didn't know it at the time, or I didn't treat it like that. And finally, after queen a4, now it was time for me to exploit the mistakes by white. To be fair, this was the biggest mistake they made in the game, because they failed to fight back with bishop f5, fighting for equality, and I think that would have been pretty close to equal. But after queen a4, it just all fell apart. What is the principle now that is letting white down? King safety. That king is not safe. Bang, bang, and bang. Crack it open. Neither castles is safe, so he had to endure the fact that the king is going to be in the middle, and we relentlessly, absolutely relentlessly started targeting that king in the middle like it was just a must. And there is your checkmate against an esteemed Grandmaster opponent. I hope you guys liked it. I really like modeling these concepts in an environment where it's done by higher rated players, because I really do think that these are particularly valuable lessons to lower rated players who struggle to put these principles in place when their opponents don't really play to the expected moves. They seem to play worse, and then they don't know how to get to them. I hope that this game somewhat helped you, at least, to be a more efficient player who can put their chess principles to better use. Thanks for watching. I will be back with more soon.